I'm just going to briefly share slides, not for too long. This is not meant to be more of a presentation. This is meant to be more of a conversation for everybody who is joining us. All right. So we are the Weinberg Family Cerebral Palsy Center. We're located at Columbia University, and we are honored to provide lifespan care to individuals with cerebral palsy. The people on this presentation today that are staff is myself, Maneli Vasquez, Eduardo Del Rosario, and we have our expert panelists that are people who can give you the real inside scoop around aging with cerebral palsy, a psychosocial perspective, which is Javier, Dina, Sam, and Tiffany. And then also that's the order that everybody's going to introduce themselves in. So presentation is on aging with cerebral palsy, a psychosocial perspective. So we chose this because it's essentially a lifespan developmental model, and we are a lifespan medical center for cerebral palsy. So Eric Arison proposed that a lifespan model development that emphasizes how social relationships shape and sense ourselves. And he suggested we pass through 8 stages that mark central conflict on psychosocial crisis that must be resolved in for healthy personal growth. Now, given that this IAACD panel is really around navigating pathways for like aging within cerebral palsy, we thought those big pathways as we age are teens to early 20s, 20s to 40s, and 40s to 60s. And Eric Erickson's interpretation, that is identity versus role confusion, teens to early 20s, intimacy versus isolation, and then generativity versus stagnation. All right. So with that being said, I'm going to allow the panelists to introduce themselves, and I'm going to hand it over to Javier, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Javier, feel free to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Javier Santiago. My connection to this topic of aging with cerebral palsy is that of someone with CP. As I've gotten older, I've realized that it's not just about dealing with the physical stuff, it's about growing emotionally and socially too in a world that doesn't always get what disability really means. So, really appreciate panel discussions like this that give us the chance to connect and remind each other that we're not alone in this journey. So, now I'll just pass it off to Dina.
Hi, my name is Dina. I'm a 47-year-old woman living with cerebral palsy. I am completely wheelchair dependent, and the same as Javier. I have realized growing up that and getting older that it's not just a physical, we're also affected emotionally and connecting with other people that have cerebral palsy really does help a lot in this stage of my life. And next I pass it off to
Sam.
Sam.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Berman. I am a disability inclusion consultant and empowerment coach based in New York City, and I have cerebral palsy as well. And
We're
I will
gonna
pass it off to Tiffany.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tiffany, and I am a disability advocate with CP in my late 30s. And I'm also connected to this topic, similar to everyone else. I'm excited to learn more, and I've also learned that it's very important to also learn about the social emotional effects of your disability as you get older. And I'll turn the floor back over to Nelly.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you everyone for joining us. So we're gonna get right into it and start with the first stage, which is identity versus role confusion. This is Erickson's fifth psychosocial stage, which typically occurs during adolescence to young adulthood. It really centers around forming a stable, authentic sense of self, values, beliefs, and social roles. Success leads to strong identity and direction, while it can feel that sometimes while failure can result in confusion, insecurity, and a difficulty around making decisions. The core question around this stage really is like, who am I? And that really develops in your teens to early 20s. So I'm going to ask our lead panelist, Sam, for this question to handle a little bit around how has living with CP shaped your personal identity during adolescence and early adulthood? And then we'll make that a broader conversation for everyone to chime in.
Awesome. So I've spent a lot of my time, even into adulthood, questioning and confused about my identity as a disabled person, in large part I, because of the nature of my cerebral palsy, I I've been told that I pass as non-disabled, and I've been deemed by the systems that we live within as frequently not being disabled enough for services and benefits that I know would benefit me. I can't adequately prove my disability. I was also raised in an environment where as well-intentioned as my family was, they conditioned me not to really honor my disability and my identity as a disabled person. So, I spent a lot of time, especially as a young adult and late teen, thinking that I didn't have a disability, essentially. And it was really hard, coming into adulthood, learning how to, um, financially support myself and what are my limitations and what am I capable of.
I really appreciate your answer around all of this because that is something as a clinician I commonly hear for folks who are in their 20s, early 20s with CP and navigating sort of those feelings around it. And then how do they find a community? So I wanted to sort of bring this back to everybody and expand from what Sam has just shared with us is when you're at that point in life, what do you feel are like helpful tools to help find a community in that stage?
I think it was hard in the teen stage to find a community because for me, other than the summer camp I attended, I was always the only girl in a wheelchair in my school, let alone my classes. So it was hard because I was surrounded by able bodied people other than my sister, who also has a disability, but she's not physically disabled. So I was always the odd one out. So I was always trying to find ways to fit in instead of, I was trying to be like my peers, but it was difficult because I had the limitations of the chair and not being able to, get in people's cars and go certain places because places are not accessible. So it was very difficult in my teens and 20s to try to figure out who I was and how I was going to navigate that.
From a clinical standpoint, for all those of you who are listening, I think healthcare transition is a valuable um, program that we honor around that age, particularly early adolescent. I think what it would offer in terms of the identity versus role confusion is you're going to develop certain skills from an adolescent to adulthood along with your peers. And I think that's very helpful because just the commonality of issues that you have to deal with, and it's proven by research. It's already proven that it will really help. And I can also compare that clinically because I have young adult patients who have not had or an evaluation or intervention from a healthcare transition program. So for me, I think that's valuable to endorse. That's valuable.
This is the conference that's going on now, but I'm muted, so good.
And that's for me, Minelli.
Thank you, Eduardo. I also think that this is a stage around where you're
This is
considering
the
like,
counselor
oh, hold on.
that
I think
and I speak
I think
with.
we gotta
Oh,
mute
okay.
someone here. All right. I think I got it. All right, now going back, this is like a stage that I see that it's around considering whether what does it look like to move out of your home? Or like, what does it look like to prepare to move out of your home? Those conversations start relatively young. They start around the
Mhm.
ages around 15, I think, in particular with the community of CP. That's what I have seen and noticed
Mhm.
around like, because there's a lot more preparation to go into place and there's a lot more things to consider. Are we going to go to college? And then what college seems appropriate? Which college is accessible? And I think that that might be somewhere we can talk about a little bit if anybody feels comfortable answering that.
My name's Maya. I am a patient at the CP Center. I also happen to be a researcher who works at Columbia University. Um, I remember meeting in high school another kid with CP, actually in a totally different state. I was dating someone in a different state, and he was a friend of that person I was dating. And we talked about he was making choices because he had a little more physical limitations than me about like can I pick a college that is like on a hill or like there were a lot of accessibility questions. Whereas for me, some of my choices were like what majors like involve fine motor skills? Can I do biology or chemistry? Or is that sort of not a direction? And it was really nice at the time to yeah have someone to talk about those kind of choices and kind of questions about like, is it a preference we have, or is it just a kind of reality of adaptation that we're going to have to live with?
One of the weirdest positions I've been in with cerebral palsy was um, trying to learn to drive. Um, because especially because part of my disability is I'm partially blind, but I was strongly encouraged to learn to drive, even though I had to like using the left hand handbrake, my right side's affected. Using the left hand handbrake, and a left foot gas pedal, like that was fine, but compensating for the blind spot, um, was I was always having to move my head to the right, so I miss what was on the left. But I guess what I'm trying to say is choosing not to drive because I didn't feel safe behind the wheel. Um, was a very difficult decision that left me feeling very isolated growing up in like a very suburban environment. But it was like one of those things that I was encouraged by my family um, from the perspective of, oh, well, you're physically able, and it will be a better for your social life. But then having to make that decision on myself that went against them, it was very challenging on a few different levels.
I really appreciate everyone's vulnerability here. I just want to make that note. Go ahead.
I was gonna say similar to Maria for the college piece. I've always wanted to go away to college and not be local. So luckily, I had a friend who I went to camp with who was also disabled and had CP like me, and he went to a college called Edinburgh University of Pennsylvania that had services for disabled students. Campus is fully accessible. They have aid care there and all sorts of things on campus. The problem was it was 7 hours away. So,
Mhm.
here you are in New York wanting to go away. And I'm like, oh, I want to go away to school, but I don't know if I want to go that far. But I went and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. The campus was great, um, fully accessible, had everything I needed. And it was an awesome experience. I think it actually led to me being more independent than reliant on my parents and teaching me the skills I needed to be independent because I currently live independently now. So I think that helped me become part of who I am today.
So we have a few more minutes left on this stage that I wanted to prompt anybody who wanted to share some guidance or anything that they want to connect with other people in regarding to this teens to early 20s stage. Dina, you're muted. Let me see if I can help unmute you.
Yeah.
Okay, there, is that better?
Better.
Okay. I just wanted to share on this topic that my teens and my early 20s, even though there were challenges, seemed to be an easier time because not fully easy, but I had a best friend that was not disabled, so she acted as my personal assistant, for lack of a better term. And even though I couldn't drive, she could, so she would drive my van. So I was able to, go out, um, with her separate from my parents. And it kind of helped me helped me build my sense of, so I wouldn't say self-esteem, but identity, I guess, during that time.
Did you feel comfortable taking more risks and chances?
Yes,
That is an amazing experience. Right.
it was.
Mhm. Thanking everyone for sharing. I'm gonna put a quick guide that around requesting accommodations for college in the chat. This is more directed for US universities, and that's just there for it to be helpful for anyone in regarding to figuring out some tools for navigating their pathway. I'm going to put back up the slide and we're going to go into the next stage. And I think that stage is going to be a really, I mean, they're all interesting stages to me, but I'm also a nerd that loves mental health. Okay, so we're going to go on to the next stage. If I can get my computer to cooperate with me, which is intimacy versus isolation. This is Erickson's sixth stage, and it's usually unfolding in early middle adulthood, and it focuses on the ability to form deep, committed relationships, not just romantic, but also close friendships and emotional bonds that brings love, connection, but it also brings all of these feelings around um failure around the relationship that can lead to loneliness, vulnerability, and emotional isolation. And a core question around this stage is, can I be loved deeply? And the lead panelists that will tackle this are Javier and Tiffany. And the first question is, has your mobility or disability influenced how others perceive your ability to form emotional and romantic bonds?
Can I go first?
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
I would say absolutely yes to that question because a lot of times, because I'm primarily using a power chair to get around, people see the chair before they see me. So it's taken me a long time to find that core group of people who can see past the chair, because the assumption is okay, based on our societal norms, when you're in a chair, you're either paralyzed or you have a cognitive deficit, which means you're not able to think for yourself or do anything. Basically, you're just there in the chair. So I would say my early 20s was rough because people just assumed that I wasn't capable. Oh, she's in the chair. She doesn't know any better. And it was, I would say now, in the last, I don't know, somewhere between 5 to 10 years, people are now starting to see that I'm capable of more and can see past the chair because they've actually taken the time to get to know me and kind of ignore the chair.
Yeah, I was actually thinking the same thing, Tiffany. So, like, again, people often assume because I have a physical disability that I must have some kind of cognitive or intellectual limitation. And, it's frustrating because people make those assumptions and they totally miss the point that, we are capable of love and connection and, real relationship just as anyone else. Like for example, I can be really socially awkward to begin with, and I'm not great at small talk. I've gotten better over time, but back then I would get really nervous, and when that would happen, as someone with CP, my muscles would tighten, and especially my facial muscles, and suddenly like I was getting tongue-tied, and I would start to stutter, and you can imagine how that plays out during small talk when you're trying to flirt. It's not a good impression. So making friends and building connections in my early 20s was hard, and um, dating was just added another layer of frustration. So for some quick background for me, like I'm a gay man who grew up in a religious Latino household where masculinity and strength were huge values, right? And I had an older brother who played every sport imaginable. He was the popular one, the athlete, the one that my father was proud of. And then there was me, the quiet kid who couldn't really keep up physically. And so, like, by the time I started dating, I was already carrying this deep sense of being different, not just because of CP, but because I had learned early on that, I didn't fit the mold of what like a man was supposed to look like or act like. And the LGBTQ community in New York is incredible. It's fun and creative, but it's also really competitive. And like, there's this unspoken pressure that if you don't look a certain way, that you don't fit the mold, you can feel invisible really fast.
I can co-sign that and then also make a small joke, which is like living in Hell's Kitchen. It is a lot of pressure to look good. A
Mhm.
lot of pressure to
Exactly.
look good and have six-pack abs. They're in my mind,
Right.
not in person. Eduardo, you are muted. I can see you are very animated and you want to participate, but you are muted.
So for the three of you first, so that will be for Javier, Tiffany, and Manali. So, what got you out of that mold? Like, okay, I'm gonna start dating now. It doesn't matter. I'm gonna see whoever I want to see now. I mean, what could you tell the audience now about that? It's not just motivation, but what kind of freed you? Was there a certain moment, or is it because of you were much older now?
I think it was just a period of learning myself and learning to accept the fact, hey, this is who I am and it's not going to change. So I'm going to be who I am, whether or not people like it.
Yeah.
So, um, take it or leave it. I'm here. So, um,
Is there a particular was there a mentor that helped you kind of realize where you are?
I think just experiences and trial and error and just meeting different people and people encouraging me to branch out and try different things instead of staying in this bubble and trying not to be so shy because I am shy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm shy and not going at the same time, so it's like
Right, right.
I'm
Yeah.
a mix of both. So,
So what would you say to a shy patient? I have a lot of those.
um, try to find what makes you most comfortable, but don't be
Mhm.
afraid to put yourself out there at the same time.
Good, good. And have you tried any dating apps?
Um, I
We have to tackle that now because everything's on
right.
the
I
app.
I tried one, which was a free one, Plenty of Fish, but that didn't work out. I know Dateability is out there, and I haven't gone on there yet.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I am gonna look into that and see how that works out. But I'm not like, that's not top of my priority list right now.
Sure.
So we'll see. We'll see. I have other stuff going on, so didn't
Tiffany,
work.
sounds like you're going to be busy.
Yes, I already am. So yeah. But yeah, it's difficult. I can see but I'm happy now that I know that dating is possible because I did have an experience of
Yes, that's
being in a
important.
relationship. Dating is possible, but it's not easy. So,
Did everybody hear that? Dating is possible, okay. And then how about Javier?
Yeah, I mean, again, dating isn't easy. I remember being in my early 20s and going on dating apps, and I would connect with people through messaging, and we would have like these great long chats and flirty jokes. But then when we would meet in person, I could see their face change in like disappointment, and I call it the one and the first and only dates that I would have. The guy was usually polite, but many times it ended up with him saying, you're great, but I don't think I could date someone with a disability. Um, and maybe I should have disclosed that I had a disability, but I didn't know any better. I was a young kid in my 20s, was dealing with a lot of shame around my body. Um, and so after so much rejection, I really started to internalize this idea that maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe I wasn't worthy of being desired or being in a relationship. And um, unfortunately, that puts you in a vulnerable position. I ended up in a physically and emotionally abusive relationship with someone
Mm.
who used my disability against me. When we would get into an argument, like many couples do, this person would joke about how I walked or make comments that like I should feel lucky that someone wanted to be with me. That I maybe deserved this disability because I probably said something innocuous to them that pissed them off. And that kind of emotional abuse really took a toll on me. It was one of the loneliest times of my life. Thankfully, after 4 years, I was able to get out of it.
Right.
But I was able to rebuild that sense of self and confidence that I lost with therapy.
Right,
And
right.
also just meeting people that really didn't like making friends that saw beyond the surface. Seeing me for really like for who I am.
Mhm.
Um, my body wasn't a barrier to love or friendship, and those connections were really healing. They helped me shift how I saw myself.
Mhm.
I think of a friend I made in New York, like months in our friendship, he never really asked me about my gait. And that was a question that I was really used to. And finally, I was the one that was getting frustrated and I brought it up and I was like, hey, you haven't asked any questions about how I walk. And I remember him saying like, you know, yeah, I noticed when we met, but asking wouldn't change the way I feel about being your friend, And so that just showed me that genuine connection sees past the surface.
I think one of the message I got from your comment, Javier, is really surround yourself with positive people. You can choose your friends actually, right? You can choose your friends.
Exactly.
Again, that's one of a strong message because I see I have a big group of patients between 20s and early 30s. And one of the challenges, not just one, it's a major challenge for them, like going out, being out there. And this will be for everyone. Do you think let's call it support group, or let's call it like a group wherein your peers are going to be together, would that be, I know this may sound silly, but do you really think that this is helpful? And how would you guys like to do that? Would you guys like to do it like in a safe space, or would this be like on location?
Wait, Eduardo, are you saying like, do you feel like a support group is helpful?
Yep,
Or
yep.
okay, okay.
However you want to call it, support group, peer group, is more for commonality and sharing all this frustrations, challenges, and at the same time trying to build solutions because
So,
it's really difficult.
so Eduardo, we did have a CP support group that
Hmm.
was
And how
function,
helpful is that
functioning
for you?
remotely, and it's no longer available right now. But it was extremely helpful to hear my acquaintances, you know, issues, and whether it was being able to relate or giving advice on maybe how to handle it, or just being
Mhm.
able to vent and say, I completely understand that I'm going through the same thing, or I've been there, so I know how you feel. It helped tremendously. We will only meet once a month, but it would
It's almost
definitely
like
help
there's no alternative, right?
because someone finally gets it. So someone understands the issues of getting transportation, or the issues of getting the proper care, whether it's from a provider or from aides at your home, or whatever the case may be, somebody else understands what it is that you're going through and you're not by yourself.
Thank you. Yeah.
I could say that I could definitely back up what Tiffany is saying. The support group was definitely helpful, and I would look forward to it every month because I knew I had even though it was virtual, I had group of people that understood.
Right, right. Yes, actually, Minelli and I work closely on that one too, like helping those young adults and really emphasize the importance of it because I believe in it. Because I think there's no alternative to it because, it's authentic because it's coming from your peers and just again the commonality and it helps to hear that there's another situation that situation is happening also with the other person and then together you guys all build solutions and,
Right.
and thank you. You guys help me in that section. Thank you.
So I think and I are just saying it, and I think a lot of people on this panel would agree that we're hoping that the clinic would bring it back because it was definitely a valuable asset
Mhm.
to all of us.
Correct. And again, because these issues are very difficult to handle during a clinic visit, because a clinic visit is a clinic visit. And I think support group is an intervention wherein you can, it's very good supplemental. And I hope clinicians really think about that. I actually, when I see patients in transition clinic around 12, 14, these are one of the issues I bring up. I start off like, who's your boyfriend now or girlfriend? And then it just organically opens up. You'll be surprised.
Mhm.
So, one thing that I want two things to share. So we still do have support groups. The only thing is that they're not monthly running. They're now short-term time running, like 6 weeks. I'm gonna expand them to longer. Um, but we do bill for the support group now. We used to have them free. Unfortunately, we can no longer have them free, but they are there and available to everybody. Now,
Okay.
there was a go ahead, Tiffany. I'm sorry.
I was gonna ask, they're during the day when most of us have to work, right?
Yes, right now I dedicated the evening to the teens.
Okay, so yeah.
Yeah.
I, I I think what my fellow panelists are also trying to call attention to by phrasing it as bring them back is I think that billing for the support groups creates another barrier to entry. So I want to make that clear.
Yeah, you got that right, Sam. Thank you for
Yes.
that.
You got it.
Yeah.
Happy to.
I hear you. All right, I will bring it back to the team. I think that that's helpful. Thank you.
Mhm.
Um, there was a question. I will two things. I wanted to back up to say that Javier, you got lots of shout outs and hearts to your vulnerability, and I wanted to make sure that you were able to know a little bit about that. And then there was a great question by Maggie, and she asked, like, how do non-panelists interact in this forum? Is right after the lead panelist answers, anybody that is on the Zoom is allowed to jump in and say a little bit more or ask questions. So Maggie, if you'd like to, you can unmute and come on screen if you like to.
Thank you. I don't have anything in particular to say at this moment, but I just wanted some clarity on uh, when we can jump in. So if you could just indicate to us when the panelists have all spoken, because I also wasn't sure, like, should we be on camera or not as non-panelists? Then I would know, like, okay, here's the opportunity.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no problem. So, all right, we're gonna go into the next question. And I think that the lead person around the next question might be Javier. Let me go back into this. Okay. All right. So, do you experience emotional isolation not because of physical limitations, but due to how society interacts with you? You might have talked a little bit about this already, Javier. But if there's anything else that you want to add, such as like maybe a resource, and then after you're done answering the question, if you can let everybody know that anybody and everybody is allowed to come into the conversation.
Yeah, sure thing. So another layer is like, so as I mentioned, I'm Latino. There's this cultural layer around dancing. You know, dancing is a big deal for us. It brings connection and it brings joy. And I can't dance. I don't have any rhythm. So standing on the sidelines while everyone kind of flows to the music makes you feel like an outsider. So in terms of how the question was how society views me differently, correct? Like,
So let me go back to the question. I have it earlier here in the chat. Do you
hmm
experience emotional isolation not because of physical limitation, but to how society
hmm
interacts with you?
mm,
And then I think you answered
yeah.
it, but I was thinking maybe perhaps like a resource that has helped navigate that.
I mean, I would definitely say the CP support group has is a resource that has definitely given me that sense of community, that space to share and connect, and just relate to other people who know exactly what I'm going through. That has definitely been helpful. Instagram, YouTube videos where I can look up other people with CP and just hear about their stories have been inspiring to me. Makes me feel less alone in this world for sure. So that's definitely a resource that I've used. Yeah.
Another thing that I would add to that I have felt other people have said is helpful is like centered groups around common interests. All of you might have, well, the panelists might have heard me talk about this, but like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I feel like is a cultural like icon and that people really connect with. So like attending, like let's say even a talk or a conversation or anything like that is available to you either whether online or in person is a nice way to connect with people with like a common interest. And here's the thing, forming friendships is similar to dating. Things are gonna go well, they're not gonna go well, but it's about just experimenting and putting yourself out there. And if that person has some type of problem or a discrimination towards a part of yourself that you cannot change and you should not change if you don't want to, then that tells you the quality of person that they are in regard to entering into a relationship with you. They are not worthy of you. You are too good for them. That is my small speech and TED Talk for right now. But I want to turn it back over to everybody here participating with us if they wanted to add anything else.
Hi, this is Maggie. I've I've actually talked to Lisa a little bit about this too, and I just kind of I want to upvote your point, Manali, and a point that Lisa and I have talked about, which is like the point of commonality extending beyond disability. Sometimes it's really odd when folks think I'm going to connect with you just because we were both disabled, like, and sometimes that feels infantilizing a little bit. Like, I'm not even sure that infantilizing is the right term, but it's the same feeling. Like, why are you assuming we're going to connect because you see I'm wearing a brace or even because we both have CP. And so that point of like an external commonality is really important. I mean, it is amazing. I've never experienced it until my 40s, like being in a similar, even like meeting someone who is level CP one. Never done that until 2 weeks ago at the CP Center lecture. And but just because we both have CP and both anyone that I meet doesn't mean we're going to connect. And I think there's a balance there to be formed, especially having non-disabled people part of coordinating those types of events and opportunities. how are we balancing, like, yes, at some point, like there'll be a conversation, maybe we'll resonate with something someone has said with regard to our experience as disabled people, but um beyond like the exclusive purpose of like a support group, which is actually meant, and you're going to that space specifically to talk about your disability, but that also doesn't mean you're going to be friends with these people. I don't mean these people as in like these people, but like the people that are
Well,
in
I
the
get what you're
same
saying. Yeah.
space. Um, uh, so there's just that balance to strike that I want to uh, acknowledge and uh, make that part of the conversation around these things.
Oh, thank you, Maggie. Like you speaking just had me have such a nice little memory when we used to have the free CP support group. We quite literally randomly found out that everybody loved Real Housewives, the entire franchise. And we had a session where people just chimed in about their Real Housewives theories and their favorite Real Housewives meme. I kid you not. And it was really funny. It was to the point that I thought at one, I think these people are trying to go to BravoCon because Las Vegas is technically pretty accessible. Not all of it is accessible, but it's pretty accessible. And it's like and they were trying to figure out how to go to BravoCon. And I was like, well, somebody tweet Andy Cohen and can he sponsor us? Because I think we're amazing. But that's like a side little funny thing that happened one time.
And also, that's a disability perk that we should take advantage of. Yeah, like somebody message message Andy Cohen, and let's use that to our advantage. Like we ought to use disability perks.
Yeah.
You should have told me you were thinking that, Manelli, because I could send an email, not to him directly, but
Oh, Dina's got some connects in
Dina, please
Bravo.
do it. Do it.
you
Well,
want me
Do
to
it.
do it? I'll do it.
do it,
Thank
Dina.
you.
Okay.
But Manelli, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
going back to your first question in regards to resources, one great resource, and I think you and I spoke about this yesterday, is therapy. I was definitely not down for therapy in the beginning until I met you, and it does help. So I definitely think therapy is a great resource for anyone with a disability. But I also think that it's important for the disability community to realize that you don't have to be friends with people who are disabled. You can have able-bodied friends. I actually have my mom and my friend Dana on here now supporting me today, but neither one of them are disabled. They are completely able-bodied, and Dana and I get along great. So you don't have to have a disability to be friends with somebody. You can be friends with able-bodied people. They just have to. The able-bodied person has to be willing to get to know you and accept you for who you are.
And you know what? This one's a clinical observation, okay? Probably of married patients with CP, more than 50% were married to an individual without CP. So this kind of echoes what you guys are talking about. So just I'm just saying it out there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just had a super quick question, but also just wanted to say how grateful I am to everybody, and feel like I'm learning a lot. I have a daughter. She's in school right now, so can't join this. She's 15, about to turn 16. So I just feel like I'm like soaking up everything. It's really amazingly helpful. Sam, what you were saying about driving is like she's in an almost a very similar situation to what you described. And we've like been talking about it, and it's really helpful for me to think about what kind of pressure we put on her about that. But sorry, my question quickly was just she's really open to therapy and has been in therapy, but has always said she'd love to see a therapist who is a person with a disability or just could like relate better. And we've had a hard time finding that, and I would just love any like recommendations.
I know one. Let me dig into my email and find her contact information. I'll put it in the chat. She won't mind.
And if you haven't already, obviously, um, I don't know her disability status, but Dr. Whitaker with the CP Center is trained in this support, um and she has been a critical support for me, and she also might be able to direct you even if your daughter doesn't access her service provision directly.
Thank you.
I'll also say, I've had a lot of luck with therapists who maybe knew about chronic pain or other forms of, you know, maybe health conditions. Not that they're all identical, but depending on, for me, part of mostly my disability is invisible, and so part of the stuff I want to work on in therapy was kind of about that. So there are other aspects of kind of a health lens that sometimes therapy can, even if they're not disabled, sort of that can be part of understanding. Um, and I also just want to thank Maggie for the comments and say, I think this is uh, partly about social life, but also partly about sort of like finding your place and the things you like to do that often it's um, kind of going between like, I have this condition that's reality for me and I'm doing something, and am I met in a social context if I tell people about it with like, that's inspiring, or you're so resilient, or um, like sometimes it's difficult for me to feel like people take me at my reality without having an disability inspiration porn lens on it. And I get it's like a great compliment to hear from a friend, like, oh, you're really resilient and you like do a lot of stuff that's hard. But sometimes, even well-meaning people will create a gap by sort of looking at choices I make or things I do as like resilient or difficult and somehow different from their own difficulty and resilience, like qualitatively different somehow than like someone who's just like really bad at a skill who like decides to do it anyway, somehow feels really qualitatively different to people when it's got the disability label.
I think a lot of people relate to what you just said. And I really thank you for sharing. Colleen has her hand up. I'm gonna ask Colleen to oh, uh-oh. What did I do?
Hi. No, I unmuted. Is
Go
it
right
okay
ahead.
if
Oh yeah,
I
yeah. Go right
share?
ahead, Colleen.
Um, Hi, I'm married with a 20-year-old son. My husband is able-bodied, and I recently started therapy because I'm in a different position in my life. I was really independent and worked, and I was able to walk at home with crutches and use a wheelchair in the community. And because of chronic pain, I no longer am able to walk. So um, I've had to, I had this fairy tale vision of CP never changing, like how I was in my 20s. I thought I was going to stay that same person. But as I aged, not so much. I don't resemble that person anymore. So I decided to go to therapy to help rediscover who I am now, because I've lost my independence, and I've also lost my being able to go to work and be around people. So now I'm isolated. Um, I don't know where that fits in. I just wanted to share that I heard it mentioned about being married and not having the spouse, having CP and just therapy. And that's where I'm at. I'm gonna be 60 next year, and um, aging with CP is pretty bumpy.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me share.
Well, thank you, Colleen. I think you just brought up something really powerful, which is like a need that we are now seeing with you sharing that should be answered. And I want to sort of pass it off to my colleague, Eduardo, because he does a lot of work with aging with CP in clinic.
Oh, thank you for that, Colleen. Yes, as an individual with CP ages, the presentation becomes different. It's as we understand it, it's not a progression, but rather it's just changing its characteristics. Because weakness is a big part of it as in terms of as you age and if there are no like a longitudinal follow-up or longitudinal care, meaning nobody's following you or giving any recommendations or hooking you up with proper resources. That can be very challenging. Um, I hope you do have a team right now.
I
Uh,
don't. I've had trouble finding help as an
oh,
adult. I find that everybody wants to work with kids,
I
and
know.
I'm in Maryland. I've never been to the
Oh,
clinic.
Maryland. So there are resources in Maryland. At Johns Hopkins, there's a CP center there where they take care of adults with CP.
Okay,
Um,
thank you.
you can actually email us and I'll give you the information. CP Center. I mean, Minali, how are we doing this? If we want to give her some information.
Absolutely. I'm going to try to find it, but I'll put our email in the chat in the meantime.
Yeah, so Colleen, take that and then we'll respond to you. And then
Thank,
I'll speak with my counterpart there.
thank you so much.
Yes, yes. So that's with aging. That's a very brief information. There's so much more, but I think when you once you get connected, you'll be evaluated, and then you will meet providers. And do you live alone?
Um, I live with my husband, and my son is trying to move out because
Okay.
he's 20.
Yeah,
And so I'm at home
yeah.
by myself every day, and I can no longer leave the house by myself.
Okay, okay.
So it's pretty isolating.
Right. Oh,
When one,
it is.
then I worked, and it's just a big adjustment when I was used to being really independent.
Right. So, actually, what I'm also really observing, remember I mentioned about the healthcare transition from adolescence to adulthood. I mean, every stage of life is really transition, and you are at that cusp right now because from 60 going into aging. But I think it, given some limitations in the circumstance that you're in, you have an opportunity to have a well-being, a good quality of life. So it's just a matter of being connected with a center who understands these challenges. Okay.
Thank you.
So we actually very naturally ended up in the genitivity versus stagnation stage,
Yeah,
which is
that's
like,
right.
how can I make my life count? Like in this part of the stage of my life, how can I find meaning and meaningful relationships with the time that I have left? And Eduardo started to answer the question. And I wanted to pivot a little bit because I see we have cerebral palsy positive on here, and
Mm,
they're able to help us answer a couple of questions around support for medical, like finding that medical center in Maryland, and also maybe some financial support if any
Right.
folks here need some financial support for medical assistance. Um, if cerebral palsy positive can unmute
Thank you,
and
Nelly. Can you hear me?
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
Okay. For Colleen, it depends on what part of Maryland she's in, because if she's closer to the DC side, she can try the Virginia Hospital Center because they're in the Mayo network. They don't have the Mayo name, but they have access to the Mayo's resources.
It's good to know.
As far as I was thinking while you guys were discussing the um, group, that if there's an issue with people paying for the course, if they could pay for that course and then free up if they needed funds to go to appointments or anything, we could cover the funds for the appointment. And then they could use the money they would have used for the appointment to pay for the group. So it's just, different buckets of moving it around.
if you can point me to a place where I can fill out a grant to help do these groups for free again, that would be lovely.
That's going to be a little hard, but I'll try.
Okay.
I will try.
Can't blame a girl for trying.
Hey, no, you can't.
Nah. All right.
I also do want to point out that something that would be honestly very helpful is just a point of connection. Like we all can organize ourselves. It doesn't have to be something that is through a medical system, but often we meet each other through the medical system. And yeah, I think it's really helpful when there are resources through a medical system, but I sometimes think talking and meeting regularly can also happen without sort of a clinical oversight, just in a context of sharing the way that communities get together and share.
Mhm.
CME.
Oh, Maggie, do you want to unmute and share?
Yeah, I was wondering if for folks who would want to opt in, if we would want to create a WhatsApp chat or a group chat or some other type of online group. Obviously, I've learned in the past couple months since being a patient here, there are a ton of online things, but also you don't know those people's faces, and like the fact that we're all here and talking to each other, and honestly, like I upvote, was it Maya who just said we don't need to connect through the medical system? I don't need to pay you guys $40 to be a part of your support group. I've never heard of paying for a support group, and like we can organize our own methods of socialization. And
Right.
so if folks would want to be like, I think initially like just forming a WhatsApp group chat at basis, and then
Movement.
considering like maybe more accessible, widely accessible group forums, um, even just like an email Google group, um, like we could start there and then move forward from there.
And uh, and then
So
also for the New Yorkers here at the Weinberg Family CP Center, we have I wouldn't say a social slash education programs that we do like in person. For example, this year we had our community day for cerebral palsy. It was been successful since our second year. About 300 attended the last time, and previous to that was more than 200 also that attended. And a lot of relationships are formed out of just those meetings. And not too long ago, too, in last week of October, we have a lecture series. We have a Lindenauer lecture series and focus on aging. And those are opportunities that we can really share with the patients. Again, this is local for the New Yorkers, but we strive to keep this up because we know it's important, particularly the topic of aging and CP.